Welcome, everybody, to Pseudo Short number 13. I am your host, Josh Kiser, and I am joined today by Kyle Hoagland.
Hey, get it right. Just Kyle Hoagland.
Just Kyle Hoagland. Well, at this point, I mean, it's almost expected because apparently Josh Haddix is just MIA.
He's got a bad case of the fatherhoods. We hope for a speedy recovery.
That said, we've only got about 25 minutes or so for this Pseudo Short. Of course, it being our short podcast on our off week. And this week we're going to go ahead and break down Transformers 5, The Last Night, which you and I both just basically finished watching about an hour ago. We got back home just in time to record, so it's fresh in our minds. And it's also worth noting
I'm not sure if a Transformer movie is ever fresh in anyone's minds these days.
Well, that's another issue we'll get into here in a minute. But we were able to see it together as you were back home, so welcome home officially.
Well, I'll tell you, my house would say otherwise. There's still a lot of unpacking to do, and I will say I have the coolest wife in the world who only slightly yelled at me and gave me only a few rolling eyes when I told her, while the fact that our whole house is a mess, that I was going to go watch a movie.
Well, yeah, that's very nice of her, and we won't keep you too much longer. We'll get through this short. So you went from the mess in your house to the mess that is Transformers 5. No easy way to say this. Initial thoughts before we kind of just get into the movie, Kyle. Expectations, and then, what you thought walking out of this.
Well, full disclosure, I've only seen the first three. I did not see the first of the Wahlberg special. So I went into this thinking that this is not going to be very good. I expected a lot of explosions. I expected a lot of military, fetishism kind of, that's
the
what
Michael Bay effect. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I figured this was going to be very, basesome. But other than that, what I got out of this movie was kind of what I expected, although I would say it did pick up and improve towards the end, but for a while it was definitely treading water.
Yeah, I mean, I went into this with zero expectations. I heard it was going to be Michael Bay's last Transformers, so I thought...
This is also the third time he said that it was going to be his last Transformers.
Well,
so,
this one
take that with a grain of salt.
This time I kind of thought it really seemed like this was going to be it. And I was kind of curious to see how they'd wrap up the franchise, to be honest. Transformers 4, I watched on Netflix, and it wasn't worth the money I paid for my Netflix subscription that month, because that's how bad it was.
It was so bad that the fact that Haddix is borrowing your subscription, it also would have been too much for him to watch.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Someone leeching it. That's how bad of a movie it was. Personally, I loved the first Transformers, as I think most people did. The second one was a big letdown, and I'm one of the probably 30% of people out there that enjoyed the third one, but I thought the fourth one was hot garbage. That said, watching this one, I walked out of it thinking it could have been worse. It could have been a lot better. It's definitely a big mess. And that said, let's just get into the meat and potatoes of it. I think the biggest thing for me is the first, 45 minutes, hour and 20, somewhere in that range. I kind of got lost on time.
To put in perspective, this is almost a 3-hour-long movie, just so everyone understands that.
Yeah, I don't have the exact runtime, but I feel like most of them are pretty long in general. It's 149 minutes, so you're looking at, what's that, 2 hours and 2.5 hours? So, 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah.
And
we got in at 6 o'clock, and then we got out at 9, and it was also, add 20 minutes of previews and things like that.
Yep.
The things you love.
Right. That's a whole issue on a whole nother podcast, but
we already talked about it. It's somewhere. So it's somewhere in the ethos of all of our one of our
right.
What grinds my gears.
Exactly. It was Guardians 2, if you guys want to go back and listen to that podcast for that rant. But that said, so the whole first half of the movie is this young girl, basically Mark Wahlberg's daughter. For whatever reason, the actress, I don't know if they couldn't get her for this movie or they just decided to write her out of the script. She's not in this movie at all. So instead he has this new 14-year-old daughter that kind of adopts, that she comes in and she apparently is a mechanic, much like his daughter had the skills of being able to repair Transformers and stuff. You could literally take this girl's role out of the entire movie, and it doesn't change anything to the plot. And in fact, I think it might have made things better because it was just unnecessary filler.
Well, that movie seemed like everybody except for Merlin's, spoiler alert, obviously, but Merlin's great granddaughter and Wahlberg were the only meaningful characters outside of the Decepticons and the Autobots. Anybody else in there was there just to have a little bit of screen time.
Yeah, but I felt like this girl especially, the whole part of her could have been removed. I think all it did was try to make him more sympathetic of a person because he took her in and they wanted that fatherly role, but I don't know if they just didn't if that woman who played his daughter in the last movie didn't want to sign. I don't know what the deal was, but she wasn't in it. And quite frankly, I didn't miss her. But yeah, so you bring up Merlin. That's the other thing. Michael Bay's really with these movies. He's tried to put a historical twist on all of them, and this one's no different. He brings in the Knights of the Round Table and the idea that Merlin basically was the original guy who sort of he got this staff that everybody's after now here in the modern day, but he gets a staff that controls a bunch of knights that can form into a dragon transformer. And yeah, I mean, it's another historical Michael Bay put out on a Transformers movie. And he also, of course, the Transformers fought in World War II against the Nazis.
Which is fair.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of all over the place, and yet for some reason, and this is the other trope about these movies that bothers me, it seems like after every time Optimus Prime and the other Autobots help save the planet, they're when the next movie starts, people either don't believe Transformers are real anymore or they think that they're evil. So I'm like, at some point, when are you guys just going to learn, we need to work together? And they just recycle it.
Yeah, it seems like because of one guy who was kind of crappy, then they just say that they're all evil. Just kind of, which once again, I don't know. I guess the story of the beginning, but let's say we already said that probably the first hour and a half was a bit chaotic, and I said a lot of it had to do with the fact that it seemed like everything was going really fast and not enough time to explain anything. There was a lot to digest and not enough time to digest it.
But you could have digested it if you didn't have all that little girl filler in there. You could have taken all that out and spent more time developing plot. But one thing Michael Bay's not known for is his, deep plots. I guess
this isn't M. Night Shyamalan, all right?
It's not Dunkirk either, which we saw 17 trailers for during our previews.
Well, I think in real reality, I think we saw one, and then basically here's Dunkirk real quick, a bunch of times. I think it was 4. There was one, the full one, and then it was just 5-second little things, which actually wasn't a bad way of doing it. As far as just kind of peppering them in throughout the whole preview thing. And I know how much you love previews, so I'm sure you appreciated that.
Well, I mean, I guess it worked at some level because here we are discussing it during a Transformers 5 podcast review. But
this is true. Well done.
That said, you mentioned Anthony Hopkins, of course, or I should say Sir Anthony Hopkins, as he is in this movie. And a lot of people thought, man, what is he doing in this movie? And to be honest,
saving the shit out of it.
Yeah, he was about the time his character really shows up. I think he has a voiceover early on, but the time his character really starts to become relevant in the movie, it actually picks up and it starts to get a little entertaining. And I remember thinking to myself during the movie, okay, maybe this is not going to be a great movie, but it could be a good movie by the time it's all said and done, because I really started enjoying some of the scenes he was in. And I felt that way through the majority of it, with the exception of the fact that it really bounces around a lot and kind of.
Well, not only does it bounce around a lot, he bounces around a lot. There was a point I was like, how is this guy traveling around this quickly? That dude was everywhere.
Yeah,
he was in it seemed like he was in Africa, and then he was at Stonehenge, and then he was back in his place in London. He was all over the place, and I would love to know what the time period between. I think it would be between when the TRF, is that what they are?
I believe so, yeah.
When they came to raid their little junkyard, from that time to the end of the movie, how much time kind of elapsed? Because it seemed like that was just like basically one long afternoon /
a couple,
evening.
it has to say, yeah, 1 or 2 days at best, but the way they travel all over the place, the timing just doesn't seem to really add up there.
Like, did we ever see one time where it was nighttime in that whole movie?
It's a good question. I don't remember seeing night.
Usually,
I guess
people use that to show the passage of time, and because it seemed like it was always daytime.
I guess it was dark when they were underwater. You know, you're underwater, so you know there's a submarine transformer, by the way. So,
which that was a total letdown. Like we didn't even see much of that. Transformer.
Right? Yeah, it was.
He might as well just been a submarine. You know.
Okay, well, let's we have the short format, so we can't break down like we usually do for movies that detailed. But let's get into what did you actually like about the movie, Kyle?
Well, I did like that Buster was in it. I thought that was cool.
You're talking about Buster Bluth from
Buster Bluth.
Arrested Development.
I think he's a very good actor, and I really should know his actual name, but he's Buster. But anyways, no, I didn't see this. I didn't see the first one. I thought Mark Wahlberg acted very well. I thought he actually did well in the movie. I didn't have any qualms with him in the movie itself. I felt the female character was charming and also acted pretty decently. I had no problem
sexualized just enough in typical Michael Bay fashion.
There were just enough buttons unbuttoned in her outfits. But I don't know. Like I said, as chaotic as it was, it did help me. I had to pay attention because it was just since I didn't see the fourth movie, I really had to be like, who are these people? Like it was all over the place. But I think just like any Michael Bay movie, the fight scenes are pretty epic. The special effects are pretty good. Once again, Anthony Hopkins, I think, was a saving grace in that movie, especially during the plot points of the actual movie, which once again is not a Michael Bay special by any means. And I actually kind of like the plot. I kind of liked the whole idea of that's how Merlin had his powers, was that he actually got it from Quintessa's staff. And I was kind of curious how he actually got the staff. It seemed like he just did a deal with just some random transformer.
He just made a deal with the transformer for keeping the secret that they were on the planet there, I guess. Yeah.
That's quite a prize for like, I'll keep the secret. Okay, here's this staff of unfathomable power.
Yeah,
but that was pretty cool. And once again, like I said, I'm kind of like Haddix in movies where I just kind of go and I kind of just judge a movie as it is. I'm not really a person that's going to go and be like, oh, I'm such a huge Transformers fanboy, which I'm really not. I did like the cartoon and I did watch enough of it, but I don't know enough about it that I'd really, think that it was a disservice to the franchise or anything like that. I don't know enough about that. I'll let someone else. I mean,
to be fair, Michael Bay has already killed the lore of Transformers long ago as far as that goes. So I mean, it's not. I don't think any Transformer fanboys out there are going to say this is the movie that made or break. Was a make or break for what he has done to the Transformers saga or franchise. He was
playing with house money on this movie. So
yeah,
he basically could do what he wanted.
So it's for me. He always has some great action scenes, but I will say I think overall I thought the Transformers battling scenes in this movie were a little weaker compared to some previous ones. Frickin' Megatron makes a deal to have them release a bunch of his Decepticon buddies. How about that? They have the Suicide Squad nameplates. They're like, I want Mohawk, and then it cuts to a scene for Mohawk for 2 seconds. It's like Mohawk, and then he's like, I want this guy.
There's a still screen.
Yeah, and it says their name. It was really weird and way out of left field for this movie. That's not how these movies were. It brings them in there, and then those guys all die in 2 minutes. It's literally pointless. But I was, there were some great action scenes overall, but as far as the Transformers fighting action scenes, I thought it was a little, of a letdown myself.
Did you find it kind of also a letdown that most of the previews that we were watching was basically Optimus Prime versus Bumblebee, and that was maybe 4 minutes of the whole movie?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. That was going to be, we haven't even got to what we don't like, and I think that's going to be a majority of topics, because after you get out of Anthony Hopkins, the music, and some of the action, I think that's where, the dislikes start to pile up. And that, to me, was the biggest... that's such a load of crap. They promote this movie, like you said, is Optimus Prime is evil, and they have to stop Optimus Prime. And you don't know what... You assume he's under control or something like that. You don't know for sure in the previews, but you know he is evil, and it's going to be... We're going to have to battle Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime was evil on screen for 5 minutes. And then... How does he get his... How does he... lose the spell he was under? Bumblebee, who can never speak under his own tongue, speaks under his own tongue all of a sudden, and it breaks the spell. It had to have been the cheesiest, worst, slap in the face to the audience I think we could have gotten there. That might have been the biggest, worst
biggest
part.
Tease.
Yeah, I think
they never delivered on, because once again, all we thought was that this was all going to be us trying to thwart Optimus Prime, when in reality it was just like two humans going for the staff of Merlin for an hour and a half to 2 hours, a 3-minute fight between Bumblebee and Optimus Prime that had no repercussions or consequences, and then they just moved on.
Optimus Prime goes, I let everybody down. This is all my fault. You can kill me now. I'm like, Optimus Prime, you were under a spell for 5 minutes. Other than the fact that you took the staff that everyone was after, you really haven't done anything wrong. And here you are, you didn't hurt anybody, so let's just move on. It was so... I felt like it was... That might have been the best callback to an 80s cartoon, because that's something that would happen in a 15-minute cartoon back in the day, is they would have something, Megatron's or Optimus Prime's under a spell. Oh, he's no longer under spell by the end of the episode, and everything's resolved. I felt like that's how it was in this movie. It was such a quick turnaround, and utterly, not just disappointing, but I felt like it was a slap. It really was a slap in the face to the audience. That was how they promoted this movie, and it's kind of a load of crap that's how it played out.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. I came in, once again, I did not see... I saw the first two movies. The third and the fourth, I kind of randomly saw, when TBS or FXX has, the shows on. And that's the worst time to watch it, because you're trying to watch a 2.5 hour long movie on... and dealing with commercials all day. So it's a 6-hour endeavor, it feels like, to watch a Transformers movie from beginning to end. And so obviously there were some things that I might have forgotten, and things I just couldn't pay enough attention to because of the commercials. But this was the first movie since the second that I paid money to go see it in the theater. And I thought that this was going to be one of those, either Bumblebee dies, which I would say was probably, of all the Autobots, that would probably be the one that would tug at your heartstrings the most, probably even more than Optimus.
Yeah, because
he's actually more the main
relationship. In right. These, he really has been. Yeah, he's sort of the one you cheer for, root for the most. You love Optimus, but Optimus is just...
Optimus is Superman. It's right. Kind of he is what he is, and
Bumblebee is the human aspect of the Transformers. If you want to, the vulnerable one. He's not the strongest one, and he would be the one that you can relate to the most if you wanted to relate to a Transformer.
All right, he's like the Ron Weasley to the Harry Potter. Maybe. Right. I don't know. Maybe that's a bad example. That was a quick one.
Fair enough.
And once again, I think Bumblebee's having his own movie coming up pretty soon, right? Next year?
He does have a spin-off movie coming out, and I believe you're right. I think it is slated for next year. I had that pulled up a second. June 8th of next year. Yeah.
So he's got enough, of a fan base that he's going to get his own spin-off movie. But yeah, I think we went to that one because we were thinking, oh my God, this is going to be something's going to have to give. And plus knowing that this was supposed to be the final, quote unquote, final movie of this 5-parter, that there has to be some repercussions. Something has to go down, whether that's Optimus
dying to save
or
it,
Bumblebee dying.
And then, his spinoff could have been like a prequel or whatever happened.
Well, it could have been all because they teased about how Bumblebee has been throughout history. They might have done a thing where the Bumblebee is just how he's been throughout.
Maybe the spinoff is Bumblebee taking care of Hitler. So
exactly. Well, we all found out that Hitler was killed by a clock or something, which was also weird. But anyways,
so that's another downside to this movie is the comedy felt so forced and not funny for most of the movie. I don't know if you. I don't know.
The guy that was sitting down in front of us laughed pretty hard those times.
He was the exact demographic because that dude found everything hilarious. I don't know about you. I think I laughed 3 or 4 times, and there might have been 40 or 50 jokes, and most of them were weirdly placed and unnecessary.
Or it was Anthony Hopkins who was able to deliver it pretty decently.
Yeah, but even Anthony Hopkins at times, this is probably my biggest knock on Anthony Hopkins in this movie. For the most part, I really enjoyed him, but when he had those zany moments, I felt who is this guy? It was, I don't know. I felt
it was dry British humor, but but the delivery is not what I'm used to seeing in dry British humor. So, and the thing is, he talks so fast a lot of the time that you had to as fast. It was his jokes were as fast and hard to keep up with as the first hour and a half of the movie.
Well, and then in the first hour of the movie as well, to your point, the humor, there's a bunch of scenes early on with those kids and how they liked the little girl and they're making jokes there. It felt just awkward watching that beginning. And I did not find the humor in this movie funny at all.
And who was the Transformer that actually had the talisman? That's the kind of stuff. It's hey, oh, here's a dying Transformer. Oh, here's this talisman. It's yours. Where? What is that? Where did that? Is that something that I should have known? Is that something from the 4th movie that I was unaware of? Was there some payoff that was maybe a couple things that were hinted through all 4 movies? It just seemed weird that you had this kind of dying Transformer, and he just reaches into his chest and is here, Mark Wahlberg, here's a talisman.
I agree. It did seem like it was kind of out of the left field.
It wasn't the talisman that was discovered. It wasn't something that wound up in Mark Wahlberg's possession. He literally was just checking out on one of the Transformers, and he just took it out. He had it the whole time, and I'm assuming that Transformer was somewhat important if he was holding on to that. So, but he's a nameless, faceless, just Transformer that was, on the cusp of dying.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm actually looking at the Wikipedia to try to see what they say, and all they say is Cade being the character played by Mark Wahlberg, is unable to save the Transformer in the ship. Before he dies, the nightly robot attaches a metallic talisman to Cade's body. The guy doesn't even have a name, and he delivers arguably one of the most important things in the movie that kind of sets everything in motion, and he has no name. So there you have it.
It just seemed once again, Michael Bay doesn't do much about plots. He just it's not. That's ultimately not important. But to me, I'm just watching this going this whole thing started with that talisman, and it wasn't it was by chance. Maybe he found it. Maybe it broke off of something. It fell from the sky. It was buried in the desert. I don't know, but something much better explained than a Transformer who had it the whole entire time. A talisman that it was referenced earlier, or later on, saying that particular talisman is one of the signs of the apocalypse, and yet that was just something that guy had just in his chest. Here you go. Now it's yours, Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, definitely could have been. You could see where they were going with certain things in this movie, but it could have been delivered better. And it's almost like Michael Bay focuses so much on the action, he really just needs to have somebody better on the writing staff to focus on making a cohesive plot. Because I think they had something here that just kind of became a bit of a convoluted mess at times, and it just fell a little flat. For me, we're kind of getting near the end of our short here. I want to make it's worth noting, you mentioned Bumblebee having a spin-off. Well, Transformers 6 is slated to come out in 2019, and while you thought this might have been the last Transformers movie, it will not be. Maybe Michael Bay not going to be doing the next one, so there could be some different direction it could head, but Unicron seems like it was hinted at, that basically Unicron is, you think, in planet Earth or part of planet Earth, at the core of planet Earth, something to that effect. Unicron, of course, a big bad villain in the Transformers comics and cartoons and things like that. I, for one, very interested to see what happens there. I've always liked Unicron as a villain, next to Megatron, of course, but still a good one there. So having him show up, and then one character we didn't mention in this movie, because they introduce a lot of Transformers, a lot of them don't make it, a lot aren't a big deal, but they introduce the Hot Rod, who is one of my favorite Transformers as well. Though in this movie he kind of comes off as like a French ripoff of Bumblebee, but having him in the future of the movies could be fun too. So I gotta say, as freaking terrible as the fourth movie was, and this movie kind of being a mess, there's a chance I'm looking forward to the sixth Transformers movie, and I hate myself for saying that.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you would think that you would not give, well, them any more money, but maybe if it's not being directed by Michael Bay, maybe that's the reason why maybe people will be a little bit more interested in seeing the direction. But if this is going to be, in a sense, Transformers 6, then the storyline's in place. But that's the problem, is that when you have 6 movies, there should be a whole lot more plot and a lot more story than there is. Now they're going to be talking about 6 movies, and there probably is enough plot to fit in a half an hour, and yet we've got 2.5 times 5 as far as actual screen time. So I'll be interested to see what they do with the next movie. I'll probably go see it because I'm also a masochist about those movies. But I am kind of glad if it is true that this is the last of Michael Bay, because maybe we can have something that we can actually digest and enjoy. Maybe more of, I guess, a more thrilling story, more consequences, something that's got more at stake than just explosions and machine guns and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see. Of course, the Bumblebee movie won't be his either, so we can kind of see the direction they head with that one. But I think I'm looking more forward to Transformers 6 than the Bumblebee movie. And maybe they'll bring back Linkin Park to write a theme song, right, for the next one. So that's always something that they could be missing. These movies, of course, always killing it overseas. This time, it looks like they're not going to hit that 1 billion mark they hit the last time. It did drop 82% in China from week 1 to week 2. So maybe it's not going to do as well. It's still already made like $500 million or something crazy like that. So we'll see where it's at. Rotten Tomatoes, 15% right now.
Not bad.
28% Metacritic.
Google reviews has them at 77% people like the movie too. It's kind of weird. I feel like critically it's being blasted. I think for a lot of for people who are just going to see a movie, I think it's a little higher. But even then, I think a lot of people who are going to see the 5th movie, or like the final movie of a 5-parter, are going in ready to blast it at the beginning. Right.
Well, that said, Kyle, as we kind of wrap things up, where do you have it? Scale of 1 to 10, and your recommendation to the listeners out there.
No, it's you don't need to see it. There's going to be a 6th one. Not much. Really, there was not a lot to write home about as far as consequences. Everybody pretty much still lived. As far as I was concerned, Megatron died in the 3rd movie. He was back in the 4th and 5th. He got Sparta kicked out of a spaceship at the end of this one, so he's obviously still floating around somewhere. So really, this was a 2.5-hour long non-consequential episode of the Transformers. So I would say, unless you're a huge fan of it and can't not see the next Bassam movie, you could probably skip this one until it's free somewhere.
And your rating?
I would give this probably a 3 or a 4 out of 10.
Oh wow, you're lower on it than I am. I agree. Unless you're a diehard fan, it's not worth seeing in theaters. You can wait. But I think it's worth watching on television, FX, whatever it is. Just DVR it so you can fast forward through the commercials and you don't sit there for half your afternoon watching it. That said, I think I'm like a 5.5 out of 10, something to that effect.
I feel like we have to go back and look at when we talked about Suicide Squad and what we scored it. Because I think I scored Suicide Squad at like a 7 or a 6. So that's why I'm saying like 3 or 4. Because I think it's much worse of a movie overall than Suicide Squad by a decent margin.
I think they're close, but yeah, that's fair. I'm not going to argue that. So maybe our listeners can go back and listen to the Suicide Squad review and let us know on Twitter, on Facebook, at Pseudo Nerd Pod. You can tell us what we reviewed that one in comparison to this one. And then if for those of you who did watch it, let us know what you thought. Always feel free to reach to us at pseudonerdpod.com for all of our social media accounts. Give us that like, subscribe on iTunes. Leave us that 5-star rating. From the shores of Lake Erie, I am Josh Kiser, and he is Kyle Hoagland. And we will see you guys next time as we will review what will probably be a much better movie in Spider-Man Homecoming.
And I'm hoping that we can also stop doing so many movie reviews. But until then, have a good Friday.